Most people watching this video right now will still be the exact same person 1 year from today. Same habits, same thinking, same frustration. Not because they're lazy, but because something is quietly controlling their decisions every single day, and they don't even know it exists. Right now, as you're listening to this, your brain is being programmed by what you see, what you scroll, what you repeat, what you tolerate. And if you don't take control of that programming, nothing changes. Let me show you something. Picture yourself 1 year from now. Not perfect, just consistent. You didn't quit, you didn't disappear, you didn't restart over and over again. You just kept going. Now pause. Look at that version of you. Calm, focused, in control. Now come back to who you are today. What's the real difference? It's not motivation, it's not luck, it's not even discipline. It's something far more subtle and far more dangerous. Because there's one habit, just one, that is quietly keeping you stuck right now. Not obvious, not dramatic, but it's influencing your decisions, your focus, even your energy. And I'm not going to show it to you yet, because if you see it too early, you'll underestimate it. Here's what you need to understand first. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. And right now, your system is not designed for growth. It's designed for comfort, for distraction, for staying exactly where you are. In the next 60 minutes, I'm going to break down 10 habits, but these are not productivity tips. These are psychological switches, the kind that rewire how your brain thinks, reacts, and performs under pressure. Some of them will feel simple. Some of them will make you uncomfortable, and one of them is going to explain exactly why you feel stuck even when you're trying. By the end of this video, you won't just understand what's been holding you back, you'll see it clearly. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it again. Because the truth is, your life is not controlled by big decisions. It's controlled by small patterns, repeated every single day. Patterns that either build you or quietly destroy your future. There is no neutral. So before we go any further, I want you to ask yourself one question and answer it honestly. If nothing changes, if you keep thinking the same way, acting the same way, repeating the same patterns, where will you be 1 year from now? That answer should make you uncomfortable. Good, because that discomfort, that's awareness. And awareness is where control begins. Now let's start with the first habit, because most people lose control of their entire day within the first 5 minutes of waking up, and they don't even realize it's happening. Let's go deeper, because what I'm about to show you is the part most people never see. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, you are being programmed. Not once, not occasionally, constantly. By your environment, by your habits, by what you watch, what you hear, what you repeat. Every scroll, every notification, every small decision you don't think twice about is writing code into your brain. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Your brain does not care whether that code is helping you or destroying you. It only cares about one thing: repetition. Let me explain why. Every time you repeat an action, your brain builds something called a pathway, a shortcut. The more you repeat it, the stronger it becomes, the easier it becomes, until eventually you're not choosing anymore. You're just executing, automatically. That's why you pick up your phone without thinking. That's why you delay things you know you should do. That's why you fall back into the same patterns, even when you're trying to change. Because those patterns are no longer decisions, they're wiring. And this is where it gets dangerous. Because every time you do something easy, something stimulating, something instantly rewarding, your brain releases dopamine. Not happiness, not fulfillment. Dopamine is something else. It's a signal, a message that says, remember this, do it again. So when you scroll, your brain learns this matters. When you avoid something hard, your brain learns this keeps you safe. When you distract yourself instead of focusing, your brain learns this is the better option. And over time, without you realizing it, you build a system, a loop. Cue, action, reward. Again and again and again. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've become someone you never intended to be. Now here's the contradiction that most people don't want to hear. You don't lack discipline. You've been trained to fail. Trained by your environment, trained by your habits, trained by the exact patterns you repeat every day. Because discipline doesn't break strong programming. Programming beats discipline. Every time. That's why you can feel motivated at night and still fall back into the same habits the next day. That's why you can know exactly what to do and still not do it. That's why you keep saying, tomorrow I'll change, and tomorrow looks exactly the same. It's not because you're weak. It's because your system is stronger than your intentions. And here's the part most people completely miss. The most dangerous habit in your life doesn't feel dangerous. It feels normal, comfortable, automatic. It's something you've done so many times you don't even question it anymore. And that habit is quietly controlling your focus, your energy, and your entire direction in life. We're going to expose it, but not yet. Because if you don't understand the system first, you'll try to fix the surface and stay stuck underneath. So remember this before we move on. You are not your intentions. You are your repeated patterns. Change the pattern, and you change the person. Now let's look at where this programming begins. Because most people don't lose their day at noon or in the evening. They lose it within the first 5 minutes of waking up. And what happens in those 5 minutes decides everything that comes after. Habit 1. The first 5 minutes trap. Let's go back to something simple. Something you've done thousands of times without ever questioning it. You wake up. Your eyes open. For a few seconds, everything is quiet. No pressure, no noise, no demands. Just you. And then, almost automatically, your hand reaches for your phone. No decision, no awareness, just habit. You unlock it. Notifications, messages, updates. You scroll, just for a minute, but that minute turns into 5. 5 turns into 10, and before you even get out of bed, your mind is already somewhere else. You've reacted to people, absorbed information, entered someone else's world, and something subtle has already happened. You've lost control of your day. Not traumatically, not obviously, but mentally. Because the first thing you did was react. Now, this is where most people misunderstand the problem. They think, it's just a bad habit. It's just phone usage. It's not that serious. But it is, because of what's happening underneath. When you wake up, your brain is in a unique state. It's slower, more open, more impressionable. This is when your brain is most programmable. Whatever you feed it first sets the tone for Habit 1. The first 5 minutes trap. Let's go back to something simple. Something you've done thousands of times without ever questioning it. You wake up. Your eyes open. For a few seconds, everything is quiet. No pressure, no noise, no demands. Just you. And then, almost automatically, your hand reaches for your phone. No decision, no awareness, just habit. You unlock it. Notifications, messages, updates. You scroll, just for a minute, but that minute turns into 5. 5 turns into 10, and before you even get out of bed, your mind is already somewhere else. You've reacted to people, absorbed information, entered someone else's world, and something subtle has already happened. you've lost control of your day. Not dramatically, not obviously, but mentally. Because the first thing you did was react. Now, this is where most people misunderstand the problem. They think it's just a bad habit. It's just phone usage. It's not that serious. But it is, because of what's happening underneath. When you wake up, your brain is in a unique state. It's slower, more open, more impressionable. This is when your brain is most programmable. Whatever you feed it first sets the tone for everything that follows. So if the first thing you consume is noise, stress, other people's priorities, your brain locks into that frequency. You feel scattered, reactive, behind, and you carry that state into the rest of your day. That's why some days feel chaotic before they even begin. Not because your day is hard, but because your mind was hijacked early. Now here's the identity shift most people never make. There are two types of people: those who wake up and react, and those who wake up and decide. Reactive people check their phone. They follow impulses. They let the world enter their mind first. Intentional people pause. They create space. They choose their first input. Same morning, completely different identity. And that identity compounds. Because if you start your day reacting, you continue reacting. You check things more often. You get distracted more easily. You feel less in control. But if you start your day intentionally, you carry that control forward. Now here's the good news. You don't need a perfect morning routine. You don't need hours of discipline. You need 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes of control. That's it. Here's how it works. Step 1. Interrupt the automation. When you wake up, don't move immediately. Don't reach for your phone. Pause. Take 5 slow breaths. This is not about relaxation. This is about awareness. You're telling your brain, I'm here. I'm in control. Step 2. Activate your system. Sit up, drink water, move slightly. Nothing intense, just enough to signal we are awake, because your body influences your mind. Step 3. Set one intention. Not a long list, not 10 goals, one word. Focus, calm, discipline, progress. This becomes your anchor. Throughout the day, when you feel distracted, you come back to it. Simple, clear, powerful. Step 4. Protect the first 20 minutes. No scrolling, no notifications, no external input. Because once the world enters your mind, it's harder to take control back. Step 5. Micro movement. Stand up, stretch, walk. Even 30 seconds. This tells your brain we are active today, not passive. Now here's what happens if you do this consistently. Your mornings change, but more importantly, your identity changes. You stop being someone who reacts and start becoming someone who leads. Not perfectly, not instantly, but gradually. And that shift affects everything. Your focus improves, your decisions sharpen, your sense of control increases. All from 5 minutes. Now, let's be real. Most people won't do this. Not because it's hard, but because it's different. And different feels uncomfortable. So they'll go back to the phone, back to the scroll, back to the pattern. And their days will keep feeling the same. But if you break that pattern even slightly, you create an opening for control. Now here's the part most people don't expect. Fixing your morning won't save you. You can start your day perfectly and still lose control within hours, because there's something waiting for you later in the day, something subtle, something constant, something that quietly steals your focus over and over again. And if you don't see it, your mornings won't matter. Let's expose it. Habit 2. Attention is being stolen. You don't have a discipline problem. Pause for a second and actually hear that. You don't lack willpower. You don't lack motivation. You don't lack potential. What you have is an attention leak. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it again. Think about your day so far. Not the big decisions, the small moments. You open your phone just to check one thing. A notification appears. You tap it. Then another. Then a quick scroll. Nothing dramatic, nothing intentional. But suddenly, 10 minutes are gone. Then 20. Then your mind feels different, slower, scattered, pulled in 10 directions at once. Now zoom out. This doesn't happen once a day. It happens dozens of times. Tiny interruptions, barely noticeable, but each one leaves a mark. Here's what's actually happening inside your brain. Every time your focus breaks, your brain doesn't just pause and come back. It switches. And switching has a cost. A hidden cost most people never account for. It's called cognitive switching, and it's expensive. When you move from one task to another, your brain has to unload the first task, reorient to the second, and then rebuild focus from scratch. That process drains energy. It reduces clarity. It weakens your ability to think deeply. So when you check your phone for 5 seconds, you don't lose 5 seconds. You lose momentum. You lose depth. You lose the version of you that was fully engaged. And here's where it gets dangerous, because this pattern doesn't just waste time, it rewires your brain. Every interruption trains your mind to expect distraction, to crave it, to depend on it. So instead of being someone who focuses, you become someone who reacts. React to notifications, react to messages, react to whatever pulls your attention next. And the more you repeat this pattern, the harder focus becomes. Not because focus is difficult, but because your brain has been trained to avoid it. Let me say that again, clearly. You don't have a discipline problem. You've been conditioned to lose focus. Now, here's the shift that changes everything. Focus is not something you build. Focus is something you protect. Most people try to increase focus. They try to push harder, try to concentrate more. They try to force it. But that's like trying to fill a bucket full of holes. The real move is to close the leaks. Look at your environment right now. Your phone, your tabs, your notifications, the noise around you. Every single one of these is competing for your attention. And attention is not unlimited. It's a resource. Once it's scattered, it's hard to recover. So instead of asking, how do I focus more? Ask, what is stealing my focus right now? Because something is, always. Let's make this real. How many times did you check your phone today? Not intentionally, not for something important, just because it was there. Be honest. Because that number is shaping your brain more than you think. Every check reinforces the loop. Urge, action, reward. Again and again and again. Until your brain learns stillness is uncomfortable, distraction is relief. And once that belief is installed, deep work feels painful. Silence feels heavy. Focus feels unnatural. That's why you sit down to do something important, and within minutes, you feel the urge to escape. Not because the task is hard, but because your brain is craving stimulation. And most people give in right there. They check something, scroll something, break the discomfort, and the cycle continues. But here's what they don't realize. That moment, that exact moment, is where your brain is trying to rewire. The discomfort, that's the process. That's your brain resisting change. If you stay with it, even for a few minutes, something shifts. Clarity returns, focus deepens, time slows down. But if you escape it, you reinforce weakness. This is why two people can sit down for the same hour and get completely different results. One is constantly interrupted, switching, reacting, resetting. The other protects their attention, stays with the discomfort, builds depth. Same time, different brain state, different life trajectory. So the question is no longer, am I disciplined? The real question is, what am I allowing to control my attention? Because whatever controls your attention controls your life. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Even people who fix their focus, who eliminate distractions, who protect their time, still fail, over and over again. Because there's something deeper than attention. Something that decides whether you take action or avoid it completely. And most people spend their entire lives running from it. Habit 3. Avoiding discomfort is destroying you. There's a moment you've experienced more times than you can count. You sit down, ready to do something important. Maybe it's work. Maybe it's a decision. Maybe it's something you've been putting off for days. You know it matters. You know it would move your life forward. And then that feeling shows up. A slight resistance. A quiet tension in your chest. A thought. Not right now. So you delay it. Let me check something first. I'll start in a few minutes. I'm not in the right mood. And just like that, you move away from the thing that could change your life towards something easy, something comfortable, something familiar. Now it feels harmless, small, insignificant. But this is where everything starts to break. Because this doesn't happen once. It becomes a pattern. You avoid the hard conversation. You delay the important task. You choose comfort over growth. Again and again and again. Until one day, you look at your life and wonder, why am I not where I want to be? Let's slow this down. Because the real damage is not what you avoid, it's what your brain learns from it. Every time you escape discomfort, your brain records it. It connects two things. Discomfort equals danger. Avoidance equals relief. And the next time you face something difficult, that same signal appears. Stronger, faster, more convincing. Now listen carefully, because this is the truth most people never realize. Avoidance is not relief. Avoidance is identity training. Every time you avoid something hard, you are not just skipping a task, you are teaching your brain, I am someone who can't handle this. And your brain believes you, not based on your goals, not based on your intentions, but based on your actions. This is why confidence feels so unstable, because confidence is not built by thinking, it's built by evidence. And if your daily actions say, I avoid pressure, I escape discomfort, I delay effort, then your brain has no reason to believe you can handle more. Now let's make this real. Think about something you've been avoiding right now. You already know what it is. You felt it the moment I said it. Maybe it's a decision. Maybe it's a task. Maybe it's something uncomfortable you don't want to face. Now listen to the voice in your head. It's not the right time. I'll do it later. I need to prepare more. That voice feels logical, reasonable, even protective. But it's not. It's your brain trying to keep you in the familiar, because the familiar feels safe, even when it's keeping you stuck. Here's what separates people who change from people who stay the same. It's not talent. It's not intelligence. It's not even discipline. It's their relationship with discomfort. One person feels discomfort and moves away from it. The other feels discomfort and leans into it. Same feeling, completely different outcome. Now, I'm not telling you to do extreme things, not pain for the sake of pain, not pushing yourself to the limit. That's not the point. The shift is smaller than that, but far more powerful. You only need one rule. Do one uncomfortable thing every single day. Not 10, not everything, just one. Something you've been delaying, something that creates resistance, something that makes you hesitate, even slightly. And here's the key. Do it early, because if you wait, your brain will negotiate. It will amplify the discomfort, turn it into something bigger than it is. But when you act early, before the excuses grow, You interrupt the pattern. And then something interesting happens. You start to build evidence. I did that. I handled that. I didn't avoid it. And slowly, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who escapes pressure and start becoming someone who handles it. This is how real confidence is built, not by success, but by exposure to discomfort without running away. Now here's the part most people miss. When you first start doing this, it doesn't feel empowering. It feels uncomfortable, awkward, forced. That's not a sign you're doing it wrong. That's the process. You are breaking a pattern that has been reinforced for years. Your brain will resist it. But if you stay with it, even in small doses, something changes. Discomfort becomes familiar. Action becomes easier. Avoidance loses its power. And once that shift happens, everything else becomes possible. But here's the trap. And this is where most people fail. They start strong. They feel motivated. They push themselves for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. And then they disappear. Not because they can't do it, but because something deeper pulls them back. Something that quietly resets their behavior, no matter how strong they start. And if you don't understand this next habit, you'll keep repeating that cycle for the rest of your life. Habit 4. The start-quit cycle. You've felt this before. That moment when everything clicks. A new idea, a new plan, a new version of you. You feel it in your chest, that surge of energy. This time is different. You start strong. You wake up early. You take action. You feel focused, sharp, in control. For a few days, maybe even a week, you become the person you've been trying to be. And then, something shifts. It's subtle at first. You miss one day. You delay one task. You tell yourself, I'll get back on track tomorrow. But tomorrow feels heavier. The energy isn't the same. The clarity is gone. And suddenly, the version of you that felt so real starts to disappear. Days pass, then weeks, and eventually you're back where you started. Same habits, same patterns, same frustration. Now here's the part that hurts the most. You know you're capable. You've seen it. You've felt it. For a moment, you became that person. So why didn't it last? Most people answer this the wrong way. They say, I lost motivation. I got distracted. I wasn't disciplined enough. But that's not what happened. Not really. What you experienced was an identity mismatch. For a short period of time, you were acting like someone new, someone consistent, someone focused, someone disciplined. But underneath that, your identity hadn't changed, and identity always wins. Because your brain doesn't care about who you're trying to become. It defaults to who you believe you are. So when things get slightly uncomfortable, when motivation fades, when resistance shows up, you fall back. Not because you failed, but because your system reset you. This is the start-quit cycle, and it traps people for years. They start with intensity, but they haven't built identity. So they rely on energy, and energy is unstable. Let me show you how this plays out. There's someone, call him Ahmed. He decides to change his life, wakes up early, starts working out, begins focusing on his goals. For 10 days, he's unstoppable. Then, one night, he sleeps late, misses his morning routine, feels off. Now here's the critical moment. Instead of adjusting, he thinks, I messed up. I broke the streak. I'll restart properly on Monday. And just like that, he disconnects from the version of himself he was building. Days later, he tries again. Same pattern, same intensity, same drop-off. This repeats over and over again. Now look closely. The problem wasn't effort. The problem wasn't ability. The problem was this. He was trying to perform like a different person without becoming that person. and performance without identity never lasts. So how do you break this cycle? You don't start harder. You don't push more. You don't rely on motivation. You change the rule. Instead of focusing on starting, you focus on finishing. This is where everything shifts. Because starting gives you excitement, but finishing builds identity. So here's the system. Simple, but powerful. Create what I call a finish list. Not a to-do list, not a long list of tasks, a finish list. And it only contains one rule. Everything on that list must be completed. No adding more, no switching tasks, no escaping halfway. If it's on the list, you finish it. Even if it's small, even if it feels insignificant. Because the goal is not productivity. The goal is identity. When you finish something, no matter how small, your brain records it. I complete what I start. And the more you repeat that, the stronger that belief becomes. Now here's another shift most people miss. If something feels too big, don't avoid it. Shrink it. Make it so small you can't say no. 5 minutes, one step, one action. Because momentum beats intensity. Every time. And once you start finishing small things, something powerful happens. You trust yourself more. You hesitate less. You stop negotiating with your own mind. You become someone who follows through. Not because you feel like it, but because that's who you are. Now think about that. If you became someone who always finishes, how different would your life look in 1 year? Not perfect, not extreme, just consistent. That's where real change happens. But here's the twist. Even people who master this, even people who finish what they start, who build discipline, who stay consistent, they still get stuck. They still feel slow. They still feel unclear. They still feel like something is missing. Because there's another layer to this, a hidden behavior that drains your progress without you realizing it. And if you don't fix it, you can work hard every single day and still feel like you're going nowhere. But even finishers get stuck because of this. Let's interrupt this for a second, because what I'm about to say is going to sound wrong at first, maybe even uncomfortable. Self-improvement can actually make you worse, not better, worse. And if you don't understand this, you'll keep doing all the right things and still feel stuck. Think about it. You watch videos like this. You read books. You consume ideas. You learn new strategies. You feel inspired, motivated, clear. But a few hours later, or the next day, that clarity fades, that energy drops, and you're back in the same patterns again. Why? Because you're consuming more than you can apply, and your brain is burning out because of it. Every time you learn something new, your brain releases dopamine, that same chemical we talked about earlier. But here's the problem. Dopamine doesn't just respond to action, it responds to information. So when you watch content, when you discover a new idea, when something clicks in your mind, your brain feels rewarded. It feels like progress. But it's not. It's the illusion of progress. Because real progress only happens when you act, when you struggle, when you apply. But your brain doesn't know the difference. So you end up in a loop. Consume, feel good, do nothing, repeat. And over time, something dangerous happens. You become addicted, not to growth, but to the feeling of growth. That's dopamine burnout. Your brain gets overloaded with stimulation without real output. So everything starts to feel heavy. You sit down to work and you feel resistance. You try to focus and your mind drifts. You want to take action, but you feel stuck. Not because you're lazy, but because your brain is exhausted. Too much input, not enough execution. Now connect this to what we talked about earlier. Habit 2. Your attention is constantly being broken. Notifications, scrolling, endless switching. And habit 5, which we're about to dive into, consumption, constant input. Together, they create a perfect storm. Your attention gets weaker and your brain gets overloaded. So even if you're trying to improve, you're actually training your mind to be distracted and overwhelmed. That's why you feel like this sometimes. You know a lot, you understand a lot, but you're not moving. That gap between knowing and doing is where most people live their entire lives. And the longer you stay there, the harder it becomes to escape. Because your brain starts to prefer consumption over creation. It feels easier, safer, more rewarding, but it's slowly disconnecting you from real progress. Now here's the moment I want you to notice. If you're feeling slightly overwhelmed right now, slightly exposed, like this is describing you, good. That's not a bad sign. That's awareness breaking through. Because most people never realize this. They keep consuming, keep scrolling, keep learning, and they wonder why nothing changes. But now you see the pattern, and once you see it, you have a choice. You can keep feeding the loop, or you can break it. Because the next habit is where that shift begins. The moment you stop being a consumer and start becoming something else entirely. Habit 5. Consumption is killing clarity. Let me describe something you felt, but probably never fully understood. You open your phone for a minute, just one. You scroll. One video, then another, then something interesting, then something completely random. Nothing feels extreme, nothing feels harmful, but after a while, something changes. Your mind feels heavy. Not tired, not exactly distracted, just full. You try to think clearly, and your thoughts don't land. You try to focus, and your attention slips. You try to start something important, and you feel resistance. So you scroll again, just to reset. But it doesn't reset you. It deepens the fog. Now zoom out, because this isn't happening once. It's happening every single day. You wake up, input. You sit down, input. You take a break, input. You feel stuck, more input. Information, opinions, content, noise, other people's lives, other people's ideas, other people's momentum. And slowly, without realizing it, your mind stops being yours because you're not thinking anymore. You're reacting, absorbing, processing, but never producing. And here's where it gets dangerous, because consumption feels productive. You watch something valuable, you learn something useful, you feel like you're improving, but most of the time, you're not. You're collecting information without converting it into action, and your brain is paying a price for that. Let's break this down. Every time you consume content, especially fast, stimulating content, your brain releases dopamine, not because you've achieved something, but because you've discovered something. And your brain interprets that as, good, we're making progress. But you're not. So you keep going. More content, more ideas, more stimulation, until your brain reaches a point where it can't process anymore. That's dopamine fatigue. Too much input, too little output. And when that happens, everything slows down. Your thinking becomes shallow, your focus becomes fragile, your motivation drops, not because you lack discipline, but because your system is overloaded. This is why you can spend hours consuming valuable content and still feel stuck at the end of the day, because growth doesn't come from input, it comes from integration, from taking something and turning it into action. But most people never make that shift. They stay in consumption mode, always learning, always watching, always preparing, but never building. So their identity stays the same. They become someone who watches, not someone who creates. And that identity quietly controls everything. Now here's the shift that changes everything. You don't need more information, you need more expression. You don't need more input, you need more output. You need to move from being a consumer to becoming a creator. Not a perfect creator, not a professional, just someone who produces. Because when you create, something different happens in your brain. You activate focus, you activate clarity, you activate direction. You stop absorbing other people's lives and start building your own. Now let's make this practical. You don't need a complex system. You don't need hours of time. You need one simple rule. For every period of consumption, you must create something. Something small. Write a few lines. Capture an idea. Plan something. Organize your thoughts. Take one step forward. It doesn't have to be impressive. It has to be yours. Because creation does something consumption never can. It builds identity. Every time you create, you reinforce a new belief. I am someone who produces. And that belief changes how you think, how you act, how you show up. Now here's a question I want you to answer honestly. Be honest. Do you create more than you consume? Or is it the other way around? Because your answer to that question explains exactly why you feel clear or why you feel stuck. Now don't misunderstand this. Consumption is not the enemy. Uncontrolled consumption is. The goal is not to eliminate input. The goal is to control it, to make it intentional, limited, useful, and then convert it into something real. Because the moment you start creating daily, something shifts. Your mind becomes sharper, your thoughts become clearer, your direction becomes stronger. You stop comparing, you stop drifting, you stop escaping. You become engaged, present, focused. But here's the part most people don't expect. Even when you fix this, even when you reduce consumption, even when you start creating, there's still something affecting your state, something physical, something deeper than focus and deeper than clarity. And if you ignore it, everything we've talked about so far will feel harder than it should be, because your mind doesn't operate in isolation. It's connected to something most people neglect every single day. Habit 6. Your energy is fake. Let's fix something most people completely misunderstand. You think you're tired. Low energy. No motivation. No drive. You sit down to do something important, and your first thought is, I just don't feel like it today. So you wait. You wait to feel better. You wait to feel ready. You wait for motivation to come back. But it doesn't. And slowly, you start believing something dangerous. That's just how I am. Low energy becomes your identity. But here's the truth, and it might change how you see yourself completely. Your energy is not low. It's inactive. There's a difference, a big one. Because what you're experiencing is not a lack of energy. It's a lack of activation. Think about your day. You sit for long periods. You scroll. You consume. You stay still. Your body is inactive. And your brain follows your body. When your body slows down, your mind slows down. Your thoughts become heavier. Your reactions become slower. Your focus becomes weaker. So you interpret that feeling as, I don't have energy. But what's actually happening is this. Your system is idle. And an idle system doesn't generate power. This is why you can feel exhausted even when you've done nothing physically demanding. Because mental fatigue is often the result of physical inactivity. Now here's the reframe that changes everything. You don't need motivation. You need movement. Movement creates energy, not the other way around. But most people get this backwards. They think, I'll move when I feel better. But the truth is, you feel better when you move. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to start. So we remove the friction completely. No gym plans, no long routines, no perfection. Just one rule. Move for 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes of anything. Walk. Stretch. Push-ups. Step outside. Shake your body. It doesn't matter what you do. It matters that you activate your system. Because within minutes, something shifts. Your breathing changes. Your blood flow increases. Your brain wakes up. And suddenly, that heavy feeling starts to lift. Your thoughts become clearer. your mood improves, your resistance drops. Not completely, but enough to act. And that's all you need. Because once you start, momentum takes over. Now add one more layer. Don't wait until you feel low. Interrupt the pattern early. Every hour. Stand up. Move. Reset. Break the cycle of stillness. Because every time you stay inactive for too long, you reinforce that low energy state. And every time you interrupt it, you take control back. Now there's something even deeper happening here. When you move your body, you're not just generating energy, you're changing your state. Stress? Move. Overthinking? Move. Anxiety? Move. Your body is the fastest way to reset your mind. Not thinking, not analyzing, not waiting, moving. And once you understand this, you stop seeing energy as something you have or don't have. You start seeing it as something you create, on demand. You become someone who doesn't wait to feel ready. You become someone who activates. But here's the part most people don't expect. Even when your energy improves, even when your focus gets sharper, even when you start taking action, you can still feel stuck. Because there's something deeper than your energy. Something that quietly controls your decisions, your reactions, your patterns. And most people go their entire lives without ever seeing it clearly, until they finally slow down and face it. Habit 7. You don't understand yourself. There's something happening inside your mind all the time. Thoughts, emotions, reactions, constant, fast, unfiltered. And most of it, you never actually see. You just feel the result. You feel overwhelmed, but you don't know why. You feel stuck, but you can't explain it. You react and only later realize what you said or did. It feels like you're in control, but you're not. Not fully. Because underneath your actions, there's a layer you rarely access. A layer that decides everything. What you avoid, what you chase, what you believe about yourself. And if you don't understand that layer, you will keep repeating the same patterns no matter how much you try to change. Let me show you what this looks like. You tell yourself, I need to focus, but you don't. You say, I'll start tomorrow, but you don't. You promise this time will be different, and somehow it isn't. So you assume the problem is discipline, or motivation, or consistency, but it's not. It's lack of awareness, because you can't change a pattern you don't fully see. Right now, your mind is running scripts, automatic responses, old beliefs, unresolved thoughts, and they're influencing you without asking for permission. That hesitation you feel before starting something, that's a script. That urge to escape when things get uncomfortable, that's a script. That voice that tells you you're not ready, you'll fail, do it later, that's a script. And here's the problem. You don't question it. You follow it because it feels like you. This is the identity trap. You think your thoughts are truth. You think your reactions are justified. You think your patterns are just who you are, but they're not. They're learned, repeated, reinforced over time. And until you step outside them, you'll keep living inside them. Now this is where it gets uncomfortable, because the moment you start observing yourself, you see things you've been avoiding. You notice how often you hesitate, how often you escape, how often you lie to yourself in small ways. And that realization, it doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels heavy, because now you can't pretend anymore. This is the emotional spike most people run from. They'd rather stay distracted than see themselves clearly. But if you can stay here, just for a moment, without reacting, without judging, something powerful happens. You separate from the pattern. You stop being the reaction and start observing it. And in that space, you gain control. Now, how do you actually do this? You don't need a complicated system. You don't need hours of reflection. You need one simple tool: write. Not perfectly, not structured, just honestly. Because writing does something thinking can't. It slows your mind down. It forces your thoughts out of your head and onto something you can actually see. And once you see them, you can question them. So here's the system. Simple but effective. Every day, ask yourself 3 questions. What am I avoiding? What do I actually want? What do I need to let go of? That's it. No long journaling sessions, no pressure, just answers. Raw, unfiltered, honest. Because these questions expose the truth. They reveal the gap between what you say and what you do, between who you are and who you're trying to become. And at first, you might not like the answers. That's normal. Self-awareness is not comfortable. It forces you to confront things you've been ignoring, patterns you've been justifying, decisions you've been delaying. But this is where change begins, not with action, with clarity. Because once you see a pattern clearly, it loses power. That excuse you believed before, now you recognize it. That reaction you couldn't control, now you catch it earlier. That habit you kept repeating, now you understand why. And understanding creates space. Space to choose differently. Space to respond instead of react. Space to break the cycle. Now imagine this. You go through your day aware. You notice when you're about to procrastinate. You catch yourself before you escape. You see your thoughts without blindly following them. How different would your decisions be? How different would your life be in 1 year? That's the power of awareness. But here's the truth most people don't tell you. Awareness alone is not enough. You can understand yourself deeply, see your patterns clearly, even predict your own behavior, and still not change. Because there's another layer, something that determines whether awareness turns into action or stays stuck as understanding. And if you don't activate that layer, you'll become someone who knows everything but still feels stuck. Let's fix that next. Habit 8. Your mind has stopped evolving. Let's talk about something most people never admit. Their life isn't stuck. Their thinking is. Look at your last few months. Same problems, same reactions, same frustrations repeating. Different days, same patterns. You try to change things on the surface. New goals, new habits, new routines. But underneath, nothing really shifts. Because your mind is running the same models, the same interpretations, the same conclusions. And a stagnant mind creates a stagnant life. This is the loop. You face a problem, you respond the same way you always have, you get the same result. Then you try harder, push more, force change, but you're still using the same thinking, so nothing evolves. Now here's where it gets tricky, because most people think they're learning. They watch content, read books, listen to ideas. It feels like growth, but it's not. Because there's a difference between learning and consuming. Consumption is passive. You take in information, you feel something, maybe even understand it, but then you move on. Learning is different. Learning changes how you think, how you decide, how you act. If nothing changes after you learn something, you didn't learn it, you consumed it. And this is where most people get stuck. They become information rich, but behavior poor. They know what to do, but they don't do it. They understand concepts, but they don't apply them. So their mind feels full, but their life stays the same. Now let's go deeper, because there's a principle behind real growth. Your brain doesn't change through exposure. It changes through adaptation. Meaning, you don't grow when you hear something. You grow when you use something. When you apply an idea, struggle with it, adjust it, and repeat it, that's when your brain rewires. That's when new neural pathways form. That's when your thinking evolves. But if you only consume, those pathways never stabilize. They fade. That's why you can feel like, I've heard this before, I already know this, but your life doesn't reflect it, because knowledge without application is noise. So the question becomes, how do you actually evolve your thinking? You simplify the process. Not more information, better integration. Here's the loop. One idea, one application, one reflection. That's it. Take one useful concept, not 10, one. Apply it immediately, same day, in a real situation. Then reflect. What worked? What didn't? What will I adjust? That cycle is learning. And when you repeat that daily, your thinking starts to shift. You stop reacting the same way. You start seeing patterns faster. You make better decisions. Not because you know more, but because you think differently. Now imagine this. Every day, your thinking improves slightly. You become 1% clearer, 1% sharper, 1% more aware. In a month, you're different. In a year, you're unrecognizable. That's real growth, not intensity, consistency. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people avoid this process because real learning feels slow. It requires effort. It forces you to confront mistakes. Consumption feels easier, faster, more rewarding. So they stay there, stuck in a loop of watch, feel inspired, do nothing, repeat. And their mind never evolves. Now here's where this connects to everything we've talked about. If your attention is broken, you can't learn deeply. If you're over-consuming, you can't integrate anything. If you avoid discomfort, you won't apply what you learn. It's all connected. Your habits are not separate. They're a system. And if one part is weak, it affects everything else. So don't just ask, am I learning? Ask, is my thinking changing? Because if it's not, your life won't either. But even if your thinking improves, even if you start applying what you learn, even if you begin to evolve mentally, there's still something that can quietly drain all your progress. Something that has nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with what you allow into your life. Because growth means nothing if your energy keeps leaking. Habit 9. Energy leaks. Let's be honest for a moment. You don't feel exhausted because you're doing too much. You feel exhausted because too much is taking from you. Think about your day, not what you do, what you tolerate. The conversations that leave you heavy, the noise that never stops, the scrolling that doesn't even feel good anymore, the obligations you say yes to when you want to say no. None of it feels extreme, none of it feels urgent, but all of it is pulling from you, little by little, moment by moment, until you reach a point where you sit down and feel like you have nothing left. No focus, no clarity, no drive. And you tell yourself, I'm just tired. But you're not. Here's the truth most people never realize. You're not tired, you're drained. There's a difference. Being tired means you used your energy. Being drained means your energy was taken. And if you don't see what's draining you, you'll keep trying to fix your energy without ever protecting it. Let's make this real. There's someone in your life who leaves you feeling worse after every interaction. You don't hate them. You don't even fully notice it. But every time you talk, your energy drops. There's a habit you repeat that gives you nothing back. Scrolling, overthinking, checking things you don't need to check. You do it automatically, and every time it takes something from you. There's an environment you stay in longer than you should. Clutter, noise, distraction. You get used to it, but your brain doesn't. All of these are leaks. Not obvious, not dramatic, but constant. And here's the problem. You're trying to build a strong, focused, disciplined life on top of a system that is leaking energy all day. It doesn't work. You can't outwork a broken system. You can't push through constant drain. Eventually, it catches up. And that's why you feel stuck. Not because you're not doing enough, but because you're losing too much. Now here's the shift. Stop asking, how do I get more energy? Start asking, what is taking my energy right now? Because the answer is already there. You feel it. You notice it. You just haven't acted on it. And this is where most people hesitate, because fixing energy leaks requires boundaries. And boundaries are uncomfortable. They force you to say no, to step back, to change patterns you've been tolerating for a long time. But without them, nothing improves. So let's simplify this. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to change your entire life overnight. You need to remove a few leaks. Start here. Identify 3 things that drain you the most. Not 10, 3. Be honest. A person, a habit, an environment. Write them down. Now take one of them and reduce it. Not eliminate completely, just reduce. Shorter conversations, less exposure, fewer repetitions. That's it. Because the moment you reduce a leak, you feel it. More space, more clarity, more control. And that creates momentum. Then add one more layer. Set a boundary. Simple, clear, non-negotiable. It can be small. I don't check my phone after this time. I don't engage in this conversation. I don't allow this distraction during work. You're not being harsh. You're being intentional. Because boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about protecting yourself, protecting your attention, your energy, your direction. And once you start doing this, something shifts. You feel lighter. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped carrying things you don't need. Now I want you to pause for a second and answer this honestly. What drains you the most right now? Not what should, not what sounds right, what actually drains you. Because that answer is more important than any strategy. It tells you exactly where your energy is going. And once you see it clearly, you can take it back. Now imagine this. You wake up with fewer leaks. You go through your day with protected energy. You focus easier. You think clearer. You act faster. Not because you changed everything, but because you stopped losing so much. This is how real control begins. Not by adding more, by removing what's unnecessary. But here's the final piece. Even if you protect your energy, even if you fix your focus, even if you build better habits, none of it matters if you can't sustain it. Because everything we've talked about comes down to one thing. Whether you show up again and again, no matter what. And that's where most people break. Let's fix that. Habit 10, the consistency identity. Let's end this where most people fail. Not at the beginning, not in the middle. At the moment things stop being perfect, you start strong. You feel clear, focused, committed. You follow the habits, you do the work, you show up. And then, one day, you don't. You wake up late, you miss the routine, you skip the task. And instantly, something shifts in your mind. I messed up. I broke it. I'll restart properly tomorrow. That thought feels small, logical, harmless. But it's not. Because in that moment, you're not just missing a day, you're breaking your identity. And once that identity cracks, everything collapses. You go from, I'm consistent, to, I'm starting over. And starting over is where most people stay. They live in cycles. Start, stop, restart, repeat. Not because they're incapable, but because they're chasing the wrong target, perfection. They believe consistency means never missing, always performing, doing everything right. But that version of consistency doesn't exist. And chasing it is exactly why you keep failing. Because the moment you fall short, you disconnect. You don't adjust, you don't continue, you reset. and every reset weakens your identity. So let's remove the illusion. Consistency is not perfection. Consistency is continuation. It's not about doing everything, it's about not disappearing. This is the shift. You don't become someone who is perfect, you become someone who shows up no matter what. Even when it's messy, even when it's small, even when it doesn't feel impressive. Because identity is not built on intensity, it's built on repetition. Now, here are the rules. Simple, but powerful. Rule 1, never zero. No matter what happens, you do something. Bad day? Do the smallest version. 1 push-up, 1 paragraph, 1 minute. It doesn't matter how small it is. What matters is this: you showed up. Because the moment you hit 0, you send a signal. I stop. And your brain remembers that. But when you maintain the chain, even in the smallest way, you reinforce something else. I continue. That's identity. Rule 2, the 2-day rule. You miss 1 day? Fine, you're human. Life happens. But you do not miss twice, because 1 miss is an event. 2 misses is the start of a new pattern, and patterns become identity. So you protect the 2nd day at all costs, not perfectly, but intentionally. Now here's what happens when you follow these rules. You stop fearing mistakes, because mistakes no longer reset you. They become part of the process. You stop overthinking, because the standard is simple: show up. You stop waiting for motivation, because action is no longer optional. And slowly, something powerful happens. You trust yourself. Not because you're perfect, but because you're reliable. You become someone who doesn't disappear. Think about that for a second. How many times have you disappeared on yourself? Started something, felt excited, and then vanished. Not because you didn't care, but because you broke the pattern. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine becoming someone who stays, who shows up on bad days, who continues after mistakes, who doesn't reset their identity every time things get hard. That version of you is unstoppable. Not because they're stronger, but because they're consistent. This is the moment of recognition. You don't need more motivation. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to change everything at once. You need to stop disappearing. That's it. Because everything you've learned in this video, every habit, every shift, every insight, only works if you stay. And most people won't. They'll watch this, feel inspired, understand everything, and then go back to the same patterns. But you're at a different point now. You've seen the system, you've seen the patterns, you've seen yourself. So now the question is simple. Will you continue? Or will you disappear again? Because the difference between who you are today and who you could become is not time, it's consistency. And consistency is a decision you make daily, not once, not sometimes, every single day. Show up. Even when it's small, even when it's hard, even when it's imperfect. Because that's how identity is built. Not in big moments, but in quiet repetitions. And once that identity locks in, everything else becomes easier. You don't chase discipline, you become it. You don't force consistency, you live it. You don't try to change your life, you naturally do. Because you became someone who shows up. And that changes everything. Let's go back to where we started. That version of you 1 year from now. Same habits, same thinking, same frustration. Or a different person entirely. Calm, focused, in control. Not perfect, but consistent. Now here's the truth. That version of you is not built by motivation, not by watching videos, not by waiting for the right moment. It's built by what you do next. Every habit you've seen here, they're not ideas, they're decisions. Small ones, daily ones, repeated ones. because nothing changes until you do. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. So the real question is, are you going to keep watching your life or start controlling it? If you're done being the same person, subscribe, because this is where behavior becomes control. And here's something most people don't know. There's one habit I didn't include in this video, not because it's not important, but because most people aren't ready for it yet. In the next video, I'm going to show you what it is and why it separates the people who change temporarily from the ones who never go back. Start now, stay with it, and I'll see you in the next one.